allegiance. We'll face to the left where it's on the wall, and those who can stand, please do so. Who's waving that? Oh, David, would you please give us a ready begin, and we'll try to stay with you.
Yep, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, David. Well, board members, next is the approval of the agenda, and I have a request, and that's that we would afford a public comment at the top and still reserve our normal public comments at its appropriate time to show a little just appreciation and deference for one who's come to present a less than probably 3-minute presentation to the board. It's a former board member, and so I thought it'd be appropriate to adjust the agenda, recognizing Ethan Kay, who served for a good period of time on this board. Any discussion or objections to shifting our agenda with just that little augmentation? Looks like everybody's okay with shifting the agenda. We'll actually vote on that with a roll call vote, starting on the left. Molly?
Yes.
And Doug is a yes. Brett?
Aye.
And David?
Yep.
And Felipe?
Yes.
Mary Beth, would you please allow Ethan Kay to come and share what's on his mind with the board and the public today?
Wonderful.
Welcome back, by the way. You know, there's always a spot at this table for you.
Thank you. So, my name is Ethan Kay. I have 2 children, Evelyn and Ernest, 4th and 2nd grader. We've been attending since 2021. Is that correct? That is correct. So first of all, I want to thank, I'm using this time to make a couple of comments. I want to thank Dr. Bean for his leadership since he became the executive director and principal. He was a godsend when the school was at its absolute lowest point after the departure of the executive director, the principal, a couple board members, and a majority of the staff in June 2021. Reality set in when the school started with only around 190 students in August 2021. He has increased enrollment to almost 500 students in a short 2 to 3 years. This isn't by luck. Through his leadership, deep experience as a superintendent, executive director, and as a principal, and sheer hard work, he has created from ground up and maintained a culture of 4 points. Number 1 is transparency through accessibility. Number 2, efficiency by listening and taking swift action. Number 3, teamwork from all stakeholders, even our vendors. And number 4, which as I've been reflecting, is really important. Eliminating any noise that doesn't directly benefit the children, staff, and the school. So if there's people that want to drive different agendas, there's not much time given to those people, because it is important to, with limited resources, directly focusing on the core issues. And because of what Dr. Bean has accomplished, I'm proud to announce that the Kay Family Foundation will immediately give a $250,000 gift to the Irvine International Academy. This gift is unrestricted so that Dr. Bean can use it to address the most need of the school. And as he's exploring his potential candidacy as the superintendent of the Orange County Department of Education, I'm excited for him. This role directly benefits our school, as well as Orange County and all the other different public and charter schools and the 500,000 students. But most importantly, it does directly benefit IIA. Dr. Bean, should he get nominated and should he accept, he has left the school in the most ideal possible place from a 360-degree perspective. He has recruited and hired experienced and relevant administrators who clearly understand our school's demographics and culture. They will continue to progress the vision of the school that Dr. Bean has created. And I wish Dr. Bean all the best as he's pursuing this opportunity. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We thank the patron and your foundation, and that high praise for Dr. Bean is shared by this board, but it comes from a voice of experience. We understand that you know what you're talking about, having opened up dozens and dozens and dozens of schools, and so thank you for sharing that from your perspective and your vantage point. We're grateful.
I do want to share one additional thing, and I want to thank this board for carrying on, I was there with you guys the first year. I was maybe one of those 2 board members that came off after a very tumultuous 1 year, and to see this group come together and also recruit the proper board members who share the same values, vision, and culture of the school is quite amazing. And of course, it continues to trickle down. And so Evelyn Ernest started school at this lowest peak with only 190 students. But talking about, just to talk a little bit about testing, my children had some academic challenges. And to see them, I understand testing, which clearly my daughter has no. Sometimes I wonder if she actually guessed it right. But I was like, my God, how did she test so well? And of course, at home, I do test her and her aptitude has severely improved. I mean, so it's a testament to the academic rigor that you've created, Dr. Bean, and of course, hiring then the right people to carry on that vision on a day-to-day basis. I see it directly with Evelyn and Ernest. Thank you. Thank you.
We thank you. We thank you again.
Can you hear me then? Okay.
Yes.
I knew I was there too, during the time when school was at its lowest, as you say. But honestly, I believe it was never at its lowest as long as parents like you were around.
Yeah.
Okay, so keep that in mind. It was, you were there too. And it's people like you that make it, that help the school continue on.
Well said. That is well said. Well, we'll return then to our regular agenda, thanking again the K Family Foundation. Brings us to closed item sessions, and we have just a couple personnel matters that we'll do, and we always do those in closed session, deference to any employee confidentiality. I'm forecasting about 15 minutes. It could go slightly longer, but that should be a good estimate for us, and then we'll return to open session. Welcome back to Irvine International Academy, May 21st, regularly scheduled board meeting. We're returning from closed session and reporting out of closed session. The board was able to consult and instruct our HR director on some personnel issues, and so we're satisfied with our harmony there. That moves us then to item Roman numeral 4 for public comments available to anyone. These are generally items that are not on the agenda, but we'll entertain whatever for convenience people who have arrived. Mary Beth, public comments online or otherwise at this point? Everybody will have an opportunity again on the topics as they come up as well. We'll move forward then to item number 5, and what we generally look forward to, our executive director report. And so Dr. Bean, thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you. We'll keep it brief because I know later on I have to present the LCAP for the LCAP training. But the executive report, I'm excited because, as you know, our enrollment has increased. We believe that by the fall, we should be around 500 students.
Wow.
Many, people still are coming in, touring and interested in our school.
Tours continue.
Tours continue, absolutely. Because of that, I'm excited to announce some staff changes. So we've already announced to the public, I'm not sure if we officially announced it here at the board meeting, but Grant Schmitter has signed and accepted his offer to become our next principal. And that will take effect, I believe, 3rd week of June. So he'll be starting right away once he finish his current position. And then happy to announce that after going through the exact same process to find an assistant principal of Mandarin instruction, I am happy to report to you that today or tonight, I've asked, we've made an offer to this candidate, and I've asked her to come and actually speak with you. So I'm going to introduce to you Tiffany Zhang. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Zhang. Very nice to meet you all. I'm very delighted to introduce myself as the new assistant principal here for Mandarin instruction at Irvine International Academy. And I come from Pasadena Unified. I'm a full-time classroom teacher, and I teach multiple grade levels. And I'm very excited to bring what I have, what I learned in the past years, and better support and contribute to the continued growth of our school. And I also wanted to use Mandarin to introduce myself. 大家好，我的中文名字是张艺媛。我很高兴能够做我们尔湾国际学校的助理校长。那么在我过去这几年呢，我有学到很多中文教学的东西，我也有教中文不同的年级，收集了一些信息。那么我也很开心可以把我学习分享到的这些经验，然后分享给我们学校的老师，然后支持我们学校的成长。Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Did the board want to ask any questions or make any comments?
I have a question. I have a question. Have you met my wife yet? Because I got a feeling you guys are gonna be.
were talking.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, my wife. And mom. You met my wife? and mom?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, we were
Yeah,
talking,
you guys
yeah.
are gonna be talking a lot.
And I love the school community. Just by doing interviews, sitting in the front, waiting for the interviews, I see how positive and rigorous the community is. So I'm very excited to be a member of that team. Thank
Well,
you.
welcome aboard.
Thank you, thank you.
Anybody else? You good?
Molly, Molly may want to just welcome you and.
In Mandarin, Molly, only, okay?
Okay.
非常开心你来
谢谢，谢谢。
这个一个大家庭。我觉得刚刚跟你讲一下话，就觉得很亲切，也看到你也很注意到我们这个学校的环境，
对
孩子们之间跟大人跟老师的互动都很好，
对
所以欢迎你来。
谢谢，谢谢，我也很开心能够来到这么一个好的、这么快乐的一个大家庭，谢谢。
我也用中文啊，欢迎张老师啊，
谢谢。
欢迎你加入这个 II 的团队，你能听懂？
Wow.
Yeah, this is very good. Yeah, 我非常非常开心，你知道吧？能够有一个非常有经验的，就是过去的非常好的老师能加入我们的团队，能够就是说能够加入到这个 leadership。
对，谢谢。
我因为我自己也有孩子在这儿，所以说，哎呀，我们一直在过去这2年内，差不多2年多了，然后一直希望有这么像你这样的老师，有这种经验的老师能够加入这个团队，能够 take 这个 leadership role，能够 lead 这个 program，我们也期待着能够跟你一起把这个 Chinese program 和 Mandarin program 把它运营好。
我也很期待，因为我已经看到我们学校现在这个数据的一些变化，然后我也已经看到我们大家都拧成一股绳，很团结的这种力量，所以我也很有信心。对，谢谢。
谢谢。Thank you so much for coming tonight. Have a very safe drive home. I must say publicly though, officially that Tiffany still has to get her DOJ, so she's not officially on board, but she's unofficially, and we want to welcome you unofficially. Thank you. All right, take care. Good night. Yes.
Bye-bye.
All right, now, the events that are happening at the school, we are wrapping up SBAC testing. And so our students have been rigorously studying and taking this test for the last 3 weeks. And I'm excited to actually share some preliminary. Now, SBAC scores used to take a long time to come to schools. but nowadays we get the results in real time. So if I could share with you, today, let's start with science. Remember, last year, 50% of our kids were proficient or above. 24 scores have come in out of 31. And of the 24 scores, over 90% of our students scored proficient or above in science. Now, even if you, take half of the other 8, and I'm sure, well, pretty sure those other half will be proficient, we're going to be in that mid 80s to potentially 90s area for science. Huge growth, huge. And that's because of our amazing teachers, Mr. Gibbons especially, who's been teaching science, and it's also because we shifted science instruction from Mandarin to actually English, okay, in the upper grades. And by the way, that was an idea from a couple parents that wanted to copy the principal. So that's how much we value our parent input. So other, let me pull up some other preliminary results. Here we go. All right, for yesterday, man, my eyes are really bad. Okay, the screen is very small. For 6th grade math, I'm sorry, ELA so far, 78. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that, 88% proficient in 6th grade. 6th grade math, 86% proficient. Remember, these are preliminary, so not official. 5th grade, hold on, here we go. Okay, so half of the results have come in, and of the half results, 100% of our kids in 5th grade are met or exceeded in ELA. In math, 23 out of 32 results have come in. 87% of our kids met or exceeded in math. Then in grade 7, 9 of our 11 student results have come in, and 89% of our kids met or exceeded in math. In ELA, we're still waiting, but of the 2 that come in, that's 100%, but we're still waiting for more than that. 4th grade so far, 85% met or exceeded, and that's about 2/3 of the results have come in. And then in math, 95% met or exceeded in math in 4th grade. And that's 21 out of, again, the 32 students, so a little over 2/3. So those are the data, that's the data that's slowly rolling in, and we're seeing some pretty good trends, especially in our focus, right, with our focus with science this year. So those are the types of results we're seeing in our academic program. So we should be very excited about that, and I'm very excited about that. I don't know if you want to take a look at that. That's been shut down. So our students have been excited about taking tests because they earn tickets for field day. So field day is the Wednesday before school ends, and the students will get to do a jog for fun or a run for fun around the labs to earn tickets for the different booths. Need a lot of parent volunteers for that, but we're going to have a bounce house out there, pizza party for the kids, different stations that they can get prizes. It's going to be a pretty fun time for the kids because they deserve it, right? So they're excited about that. The spring concert you see behind you is happening Thursday night. If you're available, please come, 5 o'clock, and we're going to see our choir perform, 5th through 7th choir, see orchestra, the trio. It's going to be a pretty amazing performance that evening. Love for you guys to join us. And then the teachers are busy wrapping up the school year with obviously all these testings that we have, unpacking, getting ready for the next assignment, doing their end of year checklist. so that when June 7th rolls around, they can start their well-deserved break. All right, so they'll be gone for 2 months of the summer. That's where we're at in the executive report. Any questions before I turn it over to Delano? All right, Delano. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I do have one more thing to say. So publicly, in a board meeting, need to share that Orange County Department of Education has their superintendent is retiring June 30th. So as you know, 2 years ago, I ran for that position. And so I will be throwing my hat in the ring. I know we've discussed it individually with each of you, and we've discussed it with our parents. The teachers know about it, the community knows about it, you guys know about it. Then I'll be throwing my hat in the ring for that. The public hearing starts tomorrow with the interviews. And just know on the record that I absolutely was torn because I love working for IIA and I love working with the community here. So either way, if I don't get that position, I'm in a great spot. And if I do get the position, I'm in a great spot to continue supporting Irvine International. So I wanted to make that official announcement to you. I know that as a board, you need to do things you have to do in order to plan for our organization. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Delano, as you get ready to start, I'll remind board members will have the opportunity for executive director recommendations and comments near the end, and we'll express our feelings just as we've heard some others today. Delano, with our fiscal report today, good to see you, and take us through it, would you please?
Good evening, everyone. How are you all?
Really good.
Awesome. Great. I know it's late in the day. I'm sure you guys are all pretty tired, but thank you for being here as well. As you know, I always appreciate meeting with you folks and going over the fiscal health of Irvine International Academy. And I certainly want to thank Dr. Bean for introducing me, etc. We're going to go through April financials. I provided the board both April and March, since I did not provide that. March is there for reference and context, but I will be going over the April financials here. So let's dive right in. For the month of April, we received $601,092.50 in revenues. And you can see here the LCFF revenue limit of $468,000, another $65,000 in federal revenues, and $61,000 in other state revenues, and a small amount in local contributions. And again, this is for the month of April. April expenses were $454,401.34. Salaries and benefits equated to $316,000, roughly 70% of that number. $25,000 in books and supplies, material costs, etc. Another $92,000 in operational costs, and then other outgo capital outlay was $19,949. Year-to-date wise, the school has received through from the month of July through the end of April, $4,061,955. Again, our budget in terms of total revenues was $5.6 million. We have roughly about $1.6 million remaining to be collected between now and the end of the fiscal year, or be accrued by the end of the fiscal year. Roughly 71% of that, $2.8 million LCFF revenues, about 4% in local revenues, $865,000 or 21% in state revenues, and 4%, $155,000 in federal revenues. Let's take a look at some of our year-to-date expenses. Total expenditures through April, $4.7 million. You can see here how that shook out in terms of salaries being 62% of that total number, $2.9 million. Another 6% here, 292,000 in other outgo. Most of this, in fact, all of this is the borrowing from charter schools capital, fees and interest here. Another 1.1 million in operations costs, and then 434,000 in materials and supplies, etc. We've roughly expended about 86% of our budget through the end of April, with about 804,000 remaining to be spent. Let's take a look at some prior year comparisons here. So at the same point last year, comparing April of 23 to April of 24, and you can see here this uptick in revenues. In fact, roughly about 36% more for the same time frame last year. A biggest portion of that again has been our LCFF, and if you sort of recall from last fiscal year, how that ADA had dipped down, and now we can see that uptick back again in terms of now recognizing the ADA through P1. Here you can see that difference there, 1.94 last year, this same period in time, 2.8 million for this 2024 as of April. A dip in federal revenues, and to be expected because this is implying that we have expensed, in fact, all of our PCSG, our public charter schools grant, and the remainder of that, as you can see here, has been expensed this year to the tune of 155,000. State revenues obviously the same because a lot of this is based on either current year ADA or prior year ADA, so it's natural for us to have an huge uptick there in those revenues as well. And again, here the local, and this is the piece that more so the school controls in terms of donations, gifts, grants, etc. through April, $162,919. And here you can see just overall for each of those categories, the percent change in terms of up or down from last year, same period, April to April of 2024. So overall, 1,082,000 additional revenues between April of last year and this year for the same point in time in the fiscal year. Let's take a look at some of our expenditures for that same point in time as well. As you can see here, expenditures have gone up to be expected, right? With salary and benefits, 2.9 million versus 2.3 million for the same period last year. Books and supplies, roughly, was that 56,000 net difference there. About 125,000 for operational costs between last year and this year, 972 for that period through April of 23, about 1.1 million here. But this is where the rubber meets the road, right? 292,000 in terms of fees and interest for borrowing, same point in time last year. I believe right around April or May of last year was when we began borrowing for the first time. So when we see May financials next month, you'll see a small amount here, but obviously this this takes the cake in terms of what we've borrowed, in terms of what it's cost to borrow us between July of 2023 through April of 24. Overall, an uptick in expenses of about 30% to the tune of about $1,090,000. Take a look at our budget lined up versus our actuals here. As you can see here, as I mentioned, 4 million in revenues. Our budget calls for 5.6 million. We have roughly 1.6 million remaining to receive. Our expenditures, as you can see here, 4.7 million. Our budget calls for 5.5 million. In expenses, we have roughly about 804,000 remaining in budgeted categories. And again, this is, whoops. This is the area here that we've gone over quite a bit in terms of what we've budgeted, roughly 275,000, but through April, we're at roughly 292,000 in actuals in terms of interest payments and fees. we're currently in a deficit of 707,558. And if you once you look at the balance sheet, you'll see that we're right about the same as we were last year, the same point in time. Only difference is that we're anticipating more revenues this year than we were last year for that same time frame, because we were actually giving money back to the state same point in time last year, whereas this year we're actually going to receive money in terms of having additional ADA, et cetera, et cetera. And let's take a look at that as we speak. With our balance sheet, you can see where we are here in terms of cash in our current assets. Both of those items are up in terms of cash in treasury, cash in the bank, compared to where we were last year. And as you can see, this is where we started that point last year in terms of having bled through quite a bit of cash with no additional revenues or very little additional revenues coming for that point in the fiscal year through June. But this year, a little bit of a different story. You have a little bit more cash, obviously, but obviously our needs are still there in terms of needing to borrow to meet all of our expenditures for the rest of the year. Liabilities wise, 2.1 million. You can see here what most of that relates to. And again, you can see here what we still owe Charter Schools Capital through April, which would be these two numbers here. Our loan to the state, which we're paying back. This unearned revenue here, we're still spending down, and we anticipate to spend quite a bit of this down before the end of the fiscal year. You know, we're going to do our best to sort of zero this out, because this will help in terms of recognizing this amount in revenues, which will help obviously the bottom line when we close the books. Overall, you can see here where we began the year last year in terms of our balance, our fund balance, 771,000. You add in our other restatements of a deficit of 52,000. You add back in our loss of 707,000 through April, puts our fund balance at 1.5 million deficit. Last year, same time, same amount of in terms of net income loss, but obviously we had a smaller deficit fund balance at that point in time because we had less liabilities here as well. Let's take a look at our cash flow, or just our cash on hand analysis. Through April, we have $532,982 in the bank. Same period last year, 305,000, change of about 227,000. Days cash on hand, relatively speaking, roughly about a month and a week or so in terms of cash on hand to meet our obligations. And I'll take any questions that you may have on the April financials. I did provide a summary, which sort of summarizes a lot of this for you all, but I will certainly take questions if there are any before I jump into the next item.
Hey, Delano, I noticed in the previous one of the previous slide, the pie chart, where you listed the budget to be 4.7. It's around the pie chart, 4.7. Okay, right here. So the 4.769, the budget is supposed to be bigger. I mean, that's the expenses, right?
Yeah, our total budget, if you were to add these two numbers together, David, that would equate the budget, which is 5.5 million.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
But basically, this 4.7 represents what we've spent.
That's expenses to date, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right, gotcha. Thank you.
All righty, you guys are easy crowd tonight.
Delano,
Yes.
I got one question. Yeah, one question. So we had negotiated a better rate with Gross Schools on selling the receivables. Did we see that through? Is that already?
We will see that when I get the May statement. I did in fact have a conversation with Austin specifically related to that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Dylan and Austin. Austin is the guy you guys probably don't know so well, but Dylan is the guy, Brent, I believe you met. And he did indicate to me that will show up when I get the May statement. So I will definitely sort of reach out and sort of back check that to make sure that rate did come down.
Okay,
And then again, I'm not necessarily privy to what he may have told you or promised you, but we'll see what that number is in terms of that rate coming down.
Okay, yeah, if there's any question on that, we can certainly connect to.
Absolutely, and if it's not to our liking, I'm sure we can certainly go back to the drawing board with him to see if there's, there's any room for movement on that.
Thank you.
One more question. Yeah. Okay, so based on your experience, and knowledge, with other charter schools, and in similar situation, what would be acceptable annual rate for borrow?
That's a great question, David. There are so many factors that goes into that. Where I would estimate it, and they would probably strangle me for even bringing this up, but I would expect, hard money rates of this sort to be, maybe somewhere between 7 to 10%, 10% being on the high end. But when I look at this, we're looking at 10 to 15 to 18%, in terms of their rates. And again, because of, it's a hard money investment on their end. And so, those rates tend to be a lot higher, even considering the current interest rates that are available on the open market. But I would, in better years, we have seen those 8, 9, 10% rates from charter schools capital. But there are a lot of factors that goes into that in terms of why, in terms of risk as to why their rates are so high. And certainly I'm not privy to their internal discussions on it. But hopefully, as we get into next year and even to finish up this year, having that continuous conversation about the rates, because in my opinion, I think they have squeezed us, for more than enough, in my opinion, in terms of almost 300,000 to borrow $2 million. That's very expensive, right? But I will definitely continue that conversation that Brett started with them to make sure that, we can at least see, if not, a point, maybe a point and a half, which would probably be asking too much. Maybe a half a point is what they would even give as being generous or consider being generous. But definitely, it would be nice if we had, something to sort of buffer against what they're charging. But right now, they're sort of the only dog in the fight, so to speak. They're one of the bigger players in the market, so they tend to sort of have, they can set the bar where they would, where their investors are getting a rate of return that they have promised them. So that's a long answer to a short question. Somewhere between 7 to 10% is where I would feel more comfortable.
Also, when you borrow, so the only collateral is future cash flow, correct?
Absolutely, yes. Future revenues.
Yeah, future revenue. As a collateral, no other physical assets.
No other assets.
Okay.
No other collateral is needed other than anticipated revenues from the state.
Gotcha. Thank you.
For the board, stay online with us, Delano, but for the board, I believe there's a comment from our online. Oh, no, in person. Thank you. And if you're inclined, could you just introduce yourself as you begin? That's for mostly those online. We know you here in the building.
Sure, no problem. Is it okay to stand up here so Delano can see me then, or? Hi, Delano. This is Tiffany Kraft. I'm the treasurer for the parent teacher organization. Nice to see you. I always appreciate your financial reports and.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Yes, thank you. So just a couple questions for you tonight from a PTO perspective, because I'm trying to figure out how the PTO can best support the school. I know we've made our $50,000 commitment to the school, 30,000 of which we have already issued checks for, with another 20,000 forthcoming. So my questions are related to the loan balance and to the days cash on hand. So let me ask about the days cash on hand first, because I'm kind of new to the the school finances. So what is an optimal number for days cash, a realistic but optimal number for days cash on hand for a school like ours?
Sorry, I'm muted there. In a perfect world, we would like to see anywhere from 3 to 6 months of cash reserves on hand, you know, to sort of not have to stress or have the stressors of robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak.
Got it. So we're still pretty we're in a tight situation there.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And have we ever been in a situation since the school opened where we had that 3 to 6 months, or has this been kind of like a goal that we're getting towards?
In the first year, and it's kind of misleading in that first year because there was so much donations and things that were part of the school's, you know, cash flow or cash reserves, that it sort of skewed that number, because then at the end of the year we had to sort of pay a lot of that back to the parents, et cetera, et cetera. And then from that point on, then things just sort of nosed over in terms of the cash. The days cash on hand, et cetera. We've been sort of digging ourselves out of this hole since that point in time.
I see. So if we got an abundance of donations, we got a very generous one tonight, and which is a blessing for the school. But if the PTO were to raise substantially more, that could help a lot towards, well, of course, you want it to be ongoing income sources, presumably, right? But it could go towards helping with the cash on hand.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Any amount of donations from 1 penny to $1 trillion. You know, I will be the first guy to say absolutely yes. It will certainly help our bottom line in a number of ways.
Okay, good to know. And then my last question, thank you for the clarification. My last question is, what is it going to take to get us to a place where we don't have to borrow anymore?
That's a great question. And that's been asked time and again. A couple of things. One, additional revenues, right? Which comes through a number of factors. Our student enrollment, which is the catalyst, really our bread and butter for all of our revenues, and time, right? And managing our budget, right? And making sure that we're fiscally prudent, we're only spending on what we need, et cetera, and everything else we're sort of banking away or squirreling away, to use that phrase. Time also helps that, because over the course of the next year and a half or so, we're seeing this huge uptick in enrollment, which will produce revenues, you know, incrementally. And that's the trouble here. It's not, you know, once we recognize those students that we immediately see that change in revenues. It's periodic and roughly, you know, when I'll give you an example, and I'll be short with this. When school starts next year, we'll have roughly 500 students. We won't be able to recognize the additional revenues from those new students until February of 2025. So it takes a while for that to catch up to the school in terms of making the school whole. So time, you know, and the other factors that I mentioned a few seconds ago.
That helps a lot, because I'm trying to think about fundraising from a PTO standpoint. What timing would be optimal for you guys to receive the funds from us? So it sounds like it's more beneficial in the fall timeframe to kind of cover that gap period until the funds start rolling in February.
Yeah, absolutely. As an example, some of our most higher, if you will, expenditure months will be August, September, October, and right in there when we're everything is full bore at that point in terms of students coming to school. We're starting to pay salaries and things like that again. We're making purchases over the summer time frame, which is that, you know, late July, early August, things like that. That's usually when we'll start to see that uptick in expenditures again. So yes, timing of those payments would be ideal. And you know, from my example, fundraising is a year-round endeavor, so to speak. Because you're sort of always, you know, truing up, you know, you're paying out, then you're truing up again to pay out again. But yeah, ideally, if we could get those drops in the fall and winter, that would help tremendously.
Great, that's so helpful. Thank you. That's gonna really help us with our planning for next school year. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tiffany.
Also, just real quick, Delano, with the increase in enrollment, we look to be out of deficit funding by what, the end of this school year coming up?
Yeah. And again, my estimates are gonna stay right about the same at the end of the 25 school year. We will be out of this deficit. And again, that will be paying back
Yeah, end of the 24-25 school year, correct?
it will be the 24-25 school year.
Which is coming up.
Yes. Because by then we would have paid back charter schools capital. The only thing that will be remaining on there will be the revolving loan, which is a small amount. But that me saying that implies that, we're going to have an influx of cash that will offset any payments back to charter schools capital, because that's really where this sort of goes off the rail, is a timing of when we receive our payments from the state. They're timed to get those payments and pay back, just a small amount that we get to keep, and then that sort of keeps us almost, engaged with them. Yes, David.
Yeah, so if you needed to continue the borrowing, the term would be maximized at 1 year, right?
Yes, I would, in fact, when I meet with them towards the end of this year, we have a couple of meetings set up. We're going to work out a schedule where we're only going to borrow through probably, September, October max. Right. And because at that point, that's when I anticipate, school has now started and we have to find a way. And we're hoping that, we have some other irons in the fire in terms of, possibly additional streams of revenues coming in locally that would offset that. But I can't really say at this point that that's 100%, but we're hoping that that does come through. And if it does, that will help tremendously, because we won't have to, again, we're getting money that we don't have to pay back, and we're not paying back interest and fees on that. So I'm trying to make that cutoff at September at the latest. If we can stop borrowing at that point, then, that will be tremendous for us.
Delano, we just had a meeting a couple days ago, and I don't know if you were here this evening to hear public comments, but the K Foundation is actually giving us $250,000 immediately.
Oh, thank you.
Without restriction.
Absolutely.
This is the first time I've ever seen Delano smile.
I know.
Well, yeah, I did have that meeting with Ethan last week, and he did say they were going to act quickly, but I didn't think it would be this quickly. So I'm quite, congratulations to you all on that. That is tremendous.
To wrap up the fiscal update, Dr. Bean, you and I have been tracking with our authorizer, who has been pursuing the idea of the Orange County Board of Education forming a fund for bridge loans as well. They're now their board is in favor of it. They love the idea. They give us credit for originating it. It may help a lot of charters. It's in legal review now. So if it's legally feasible, that will be another option for us, swapping out high dollar loans for low dollar or no dollar loans. So, and that's a great future ahead too. So just wanted everybody to get an update. We haven't stopped pursuing that. I know, David, you've been pursuing angles. Brett, you got a better deal for us, and we're looking to use those relationships as well. So not in stone yet, but
yeah,
legal is evaluating.
But I am excited to hear that the projection around September, October, we will not have to have deficit funding.
Next year.
This fall coming up. No, the fall coming up, which is in a few months, which is this October.
About 1 quarter away.
Yes, and then by the end of the next school year, we should be in the black. All right, so with that, Delano, we were going to invite you to our board retreat, which we're going to discuss today. And I believe we're gonna share our budget, correct? Then, are you on mute?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. And you weren't presenting the budget tonight?
Yes, yeah, Dr. Bean, I will present the preliminary budget and I will sort of make that in bold letters here, preliminary. We still have, some work to do on that end in terms of, tightening up the screws on it, dotting the i's and crossing the t's. Is this a good moment for that, or is
Almost.
okay? All right, I won't jump the gun.
We're gonna pick that up in item 7, is that right?
Yes, so,
Well, wonderful, then, we'll move to the consent agenda. One item, just the approval of the April 16th board meeting minutes. If everybody had an opportunity to review that, I'll ask then, for a motion. Thank you again, K Family Foundation and Ethan K, former board member as well. Thank you, and parent of 2 and IIA. Ask for a motion to approve the April 16th minutes. Okay, and a second, please. Second. And Brett seconds. Perfect. Thank you, Molly. And I'll just go a roll call vote. Molly?
Yes.
And Doug is a yes, and Brett? Aye. And David?
Yeah.
And Felipe?
Yes.
Okay, minutes approved. And that brings us to our discussion items tonight, item number 7. The first is back to Delano, our preliminary budget report. And Delano, could you just summarize the timing and process? Because we must have this approved before the new fiscal year, which will allow us at our June retreat to do the final approval. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. So sort of lining this up, there are a couple of things that that will come ahead of this in June, which will be your LCAP. And obviously the LCAP, has some predication with the budget in terms of, or some relationship with the budget in terms of making sure those goals and actions are directly tied to expenditures, et cetera. So Dr. Bean and I have been working on the LCAP, and in fact, after his presentation tonight, we'll be working on the final draft of that, which will incorporate the 24-25 budget. As I mentioned, this still is in a preliminary state, but I will share with you now. And while I'm doing that, I'll sort of give you a little update, as I've been promising you that the governor was going to release his May revision last week, and he did that. There was not a whole lot of good news, but there wasn't a lot of bad news either, in a sense, if I could say that. And I'll pull up a couple of things and share with you while I'm pulling the budget up here. Currently, the deficit for the state, as I mentioned, it was roughly about $84 million. That got reduced down from January to roughly 48 billion. It has since been reduced through various accounting methods to roughly 27 billion for this coming fiscal year, for the 24-25 fiscal year. The remaining 17 million will be offset through various true up of revenues that he's no longer going to appropriate elsewhere. So it's going to just get absorbed back into the budget for that deficit. But ideally, from 48 to 27 million is, it's a big jump, which was good. But we're not necessarily out of the woods yet in terms of the legislature still has to sign off on it and approve it, and then the governor has to sign it. And this will happen less than a month from now in June, about middle of June or so. We can anticipate having that budget finalized. There will be he made all efforts, and I will certainly give him credit, and even his predecessors, former governor. K-12 education has always been protected at all cost, right? That's a valuable, obviously, resource in terms of making sure that Prop 98, which is the guaranteed funding for schools, continues to be funded at a higher rate. This year, there's only a small COLA of 1.07%. Just to give you context here, back in January, that was at 0.70%. So not much movement on the COLA overall. In prior years, we've seen COLAs of 3, 4, 5%, and in some years we've seen super COLAs of 7, 8%. For a lot of factors and reasons, we coming out of the pandemic, we're starting to see here now, the effects of that long term on the economy, right? And how that impacts state revenues, whether it's, from corporate taxes to sales tax to individual income taxes and those things. Those are really the funding streams for revenues for the state. And overall, just with the nation's economy as a whole, which is impacted by California, and California impacting the nation as well. We are not necessarily at a place where I can say that, we're out of the woods. Interest rates have not gone up the last quarter. I'm hoping that stays the same again. I doubt that they will lower the interest rate, but we'll see what happens come November during the election cycle, where we'll tend to maybe see some movement in that direction that may help one party versus the other. I don't know, but we may see some movement there, and we'll see what happens after the election, regardless of which candidate gets elected. Certainly something will come out of that. That being said, as I mentioned, there was not a whole lot in the budget that the governor could do to prop up the K-12 budget. The overall budget percentage-wise, K-12 education roughly makes up about 42, 43% of the state budget. So that's a big chunk, right? And so obviously any movement or change there has impact. One thing that will come out of this will be some deferrals, right? And I say some because I don't know exactly how much or when those deferrals will hit. Chances are, and I'll give you just a little small example here. Let's just say in September, we're supposed to get, 10% of our revenues from the state. They may only give us 3% of that and punt the other 7% down into future months, right? And they may do that 3 or 4 times throughout the course of the fiscal year, where they will defer a percentage or the entire amount of that. We just don't know yet. We'll get that answer somewhere in the late summer, probably right around, I would say maybe late July, early August, before we'll know what that deferral schedule looks like. But one is coming. We just don't know how great or how small that will be. But it seems like good news, because that deficit was reduced down to 28 billion as opposed to the 48 billion. So that certainly will help that to some degree. Let me share with you what we've been working on here. It's not very big, but I'll try to do my best to. And I believe you guys all have a copy of it. So we're really focused here, right, on this area here, which is our 24-25. These out years here are here for context and planning purposes, but as we know, these are subject to change over time or even next week, barring any bad news or circumstance. We're anticipating 510 students, and you can see here the breakdown of those, and these numbers are coming directly from Mary Beth and Dr. Bean in terms of lottery enrollment, things like that. Quite a bit of TK in here, and those are the students that we're banking on in terms of stability for the future of the school, in terms of having a high TK and K enrollment population that tend to be your feeder for your grades as you grow. We're anticipating ADA of attendance rate of 96%, which will equate to about 489.6 ADA for us. And when we look at our revenues that will yield from that, I left 23-24 up in here for context purposes. You can disregard that for now. As I mentioned here, our 510 ADA will equate to about 489 students. You can see the revenues that will be derived from this. This is based on the old calculator. There's a new calculator that came out last week, which is why this is a preliminary budget. I'm going to update these numbers into that new calculator, which will spit out hopefully higher revenues. It won't be a lot because I mentioned the COLA was only 1.07. So hopefully we'll see this go up, you know, a few $100,000 if that, right? There. Other factors here in terms of revenues, we're looking about 93,000 in state revenues. One that I have not built in here yet, but we're going to get will be these title revenues here. I now have the mechanisms in place to apply for these. And so I'm hoping that, you know, I can't put anything in here yet because I don't know even what those numbers will be, but we know that this number will go up some. But maybe not when we finalize the budget in June, but when we do a revision to that budget later on in the year, we'll be able to account for these because we'll get approval for the title funds. And hopefully if your student population has, in terms of your unduplicated percentage, in terms of low income, foster, things like that, have ticked up a little bit, that would equate to more revenues for you with the title funds. Other state revenues, about $1,052,000 here. You can see where we're shaking out in terms of some of your ELOP revenues, which is the after school program revenues will go up. Obviously, your lottery revenues will go up. Your lunch program revenues will go up as well. And then obviously your state special ed AB 602 revenues will go up as well because these are based on ADA. So we're looking at about $1,052,000 there. And again, this is where, you know, the school controls in terms of fundraising, PTO, et cetera, based on what I have here. And obviously if that changes in terms of their contribution or commitment to the school, I will certainly take that number and plug it in here as well for us. We're looking at roughly about 9 million in estimated revenues for next year compared to where we were this year, about 5.6 million. So it's an uptick of about $4 million, give or take.
Are you waiting for us to applaud on that? Because that was an applause line, right?
You know, I'm not a great public speaker or orator that can get those applause moments in there. So, but no applause needed for this. So let's take a look at our expenditures, because then again, this is kind of where the rubber will meet the road. Dr. Bean and I did have a conversation about sort of holding steadily on salaries for the moment, right? Just because again, we're anticipating obviously trying to grow the fund balance back. One of that, obviously our staff is just as valuable as our students, and we want to make sure we honor that. So at some point, there may be a conversation about, adjusting this, but right now, my suggestion was to sort of hold steady on salary increases for this year until we get a better feel for what potentially the budget will be final for next year, something that we're comfortable with. So we'll sort of put that in pencil for now. We're looking at roughly about 2.4 million in salaries for certificated staff, another 902,000 here for classified, and then about $1,053,000 in terms of benefits for staff as well. And again, these are costs that continuously go up. The only thing here, the STRS rates did not increase, so that's a blessing in disguise to a large degree, so that employer costs will remain at 19%. 19.1% this year. I believe in 2026-27, there may be an increase in that rate. So we'll be prepared for that. Roughly personnel expenses, 4.4 million. Here, our program cost roughly 620,000. We're still vetting this a little bit because when I meet with Dr. Bean, we're going to look at some expenditures through April. We'll sort of project any other additional needs that will come up for next year. Obviously, increasing our overall student body here will require us to do that. Obviously, we'll have additional space for next year when we talk about that further down, classroom space and things like that. But obviously, there may be more materials and supplies above and beyond what's currently projected here that will be needed for those additional students. Right now, we're looking at roughly $620,000 in books and supplies, materials and supplies, curriculum, et cetera, for the school. As I mentioned down here in our operational costs, and I'll sort of jump right to it here. This line item, $427,000, that's roughly our new lease costs for, even though we are getting Prop 39 from the district, we still have that additional space that we're leasing for students that are not in district, or additional space that the district is going to allow the school to lease on a per square foot basis. Let's drop down a little bit more here. Educational consultants and things like that. Obviously, this will come out. I can see that right. That legal settlement should not be there. That should be coming out. So that will increase the bottom line a little bit. And again, we've built in some costs for substitutes, special ed services, after school program, things like that. Those are all built in here as well, in this number here as well. Dropping down here, our services and operating costs about 1.5 million. And then lastly, but not least, and again, I sort of overestimated this number. And again, here, we're anticipating only borrowing through about September. I seriously doubt we'll hit this number, but I did put that in there as a precaution, right? Overall. What we're looking at is about 2.5 million in total operational costs. Our total expenditures, 6.9 million for all categories, including salaries, benefits, etc. Someone asked earlier, how do we expect to get out of that deficit that we're in? This is how, right? So I'm hoping if we're anywhere near this number, and obviously, as I mentioned about staffing and salaries earlier, that's still being vetted a little bit and being tweaked, and I always sort of leave plenty of room for that to be tweaked, because I always want to make sure that your executive director has room to negotiate and has some leverage in terms of finding the most ideal staff for the school. So there is some room built into here for that with this net income that we're projecting of about 2.1 million in a perfect world, all things being equal. That's the overall budget in a sense. I'll jump down here and just going to look at our FTEs and our salaries again. We're anticipating roughly about 47.38 FTEs, which equates to about 29.25 certificated staff and about 18.13 support staff across the entire school. This is the LCFF calculator that I mentioned. You can go ahead and disregard this one because this is now officially stale as of last week, because once the governor releases his May revision and new calculators produced, I believe I did get that last Friday, so I'll go ahead and plug our numbers into that to true up our LCFF revenues, etc. But just for context purposes, just want to show the board how we arrive at those figures in terms of our LCFF dollars. And then last but not least, our cash flow here. I won't bore you with all of this. It's quite a bit here. And again, this will be updated throughout the course of the school year. But I did build in here, obviously, our budgeted revenues, our expenditures, etc., as well as, this is obviously cut off, but you can sort of see here where we are in terms of anticipated revenues coming in between July, August, September, October, right? So I'm hoping that somewhere in here, I did have, let's see here, the receivables built in up to here, right? And then these are just the paybacks for those over the course of the year if need be. But as I mentioned, I'm anticipating us not having to borrow after September and maybe as late as October for that last round of borrowing. All things being equal and us being able to manage our expenditures, and timing of that is just so key in terms of managing the outflow versus the inflow of revenues coming in. But we will produce another, obviously, more nailed down budget between now and the next board meeting, after our meeting with Dr. Bean. Alrighty, I will take any questions that you may have on the preliminary budget, if there are any at this point in time. And then obviously, again, this will be incorporated into the LCAP for 24-25, as well as part of the retreat discussion at the next board meeting / retreat.
Just a general question, our current ADA rate year to date, do we know roughly what that is? Is it 96? It is 96?
We actually, 353, which was a student or two above what we had budgeted. And then the attendance rate is 96.3. Yeah.
So yeah, short answer to your question, Brent. Yeah, the school has been averaging roughly about that 96th percentile in terms of attendance rate, which is always good for a K-12 school, in terms of what we would anticipate the ADA to be, barring, major illnesses or something like that.
Well, we appreciate it, too. Any other comments from board members on the preliminary budget? We'll go through this one more time with the new formula with Delano at our board retreat, and then approve our budget. Of course, we get at a couple times, or at least the midpoint, a chance to revise a budget, but Delano's predictions and North Compass have been right on their track. And just like he said, back about 6-8 months ago, this is about the time we see it true up and the revenues begin to catch up. We're not all the way there. So his forecasts are very, very helpful. And like I said, probably the best forecasting spreadsheet I've ever seen in this arena. It's just tremendous. Thank you. Any others? Preliminary. Great. Let's move then to item B, the discussion on LCAP and the public hearing presentation with Dr. Beam. Delano, will you stay with us, or are you going to drop off now?
Good on that.
I'll stick around if you guys need me to.
I'm looking at the agenda. I'm not sure it's required, but yeah, you're welcome to, of course, but you're not obligated.
Okay, thank you. I'll stick around for a little bit. If I drop off and there's a need to bring me back, Mary Beth, just go ahead and text me, okay?
Sure.
All right, we're almost there. It's been a long evening.
Let me bring it in.
Yeah, it's extended screen, so you have to, there you go. Slides.
You could probably just.
Okay, board, as you're aware, again, this is one of those things that we codify, and you'll be doing this every year. So the month before we vote on the LCAP, we have a public hearing. And so tonight is the official LCAP public hearing. Just a reminder what the LCAP is. It's a 3-year plan. It also guides your evaluation of the executive director or the superintendent of the school. And so it's a 3-year plan that describes our goals, actions, services, and budget to support, obviously, positive student outcomes. It is required by law. The state of California, and is approved by the board of directors every June. It's also an opportunity to share to the community our stories of how, what, and why our programs and services are meeting the needs of our students. So the LCAP addresses 8 state priorities under 3 main categories called conditions of learning, student outcomes, and engagement. As you can see, when you write up goals and actions, you must include one of these 8, and then you must include all 8 in your LCAP. All right, and so these are priorities that the state of California and all districts focus in on as they serve students and communities. Just a general project timeline for you to know. In January, we began to assess, and remember, we gave a mid-year LCAP report and gave you mid-year data. We also had LCAP meetings at Coffee with the Principal, at our ELAC, meetings with the staff, as well as the board, in which we engage them in meetings to help us create and develop goals and actions. So what you're gonna see today is a combination of many of the input from many stakeholders. Then in March and April, we began drafting and creating these actions and initiatives with, of course, the consult of all of our stakeholders. So we had another Coffee with the Principal in which we talked about LCAP, and then we also sent out a family survey and gathered data based on the family survey. In the process, the ELAC committee had 2 meetings in which they received input on the LCAP. So that finally we begin to finalize, and then next month, we will present the final LCAP at a public hearing for your board approval. So here are the goals that we heard over and over again from our community and stakeholders. Very similar to the goals that we had in our first cycle. Now, the LCAP is a 3-year cycle, so we just ended our previous LCAP. Now we're into a new 3-year cycle. Goal 1 was ensure all scholars are meaningfully engaged and achieve in rigorous and standard aligned dual immersion program in both English and Mandarin, and students are engaged in academic intervention if necessary. So we added that intervention piece because a lot of our parents wanted more interventions in Mandarin or more interventions in English. Because remember, we have a high population of English learners, over 30%. And with that, we have many students who need more English support and many students who need Mandarin. So intervention is necessary for that. Goal 2 is to create a safe, inclusive, and welcoming school climate. When I use the word inclusive, it means we have students with disabilities. So we want to have an inclusive environment that engages many of our students, no matter what their disabilities are, including we have quite a few, several actually, that are moderate to severe disabilities, students on the autism spectrum. And so that's why parents and other stakeholders said, let's make sure we call that out. So create a safe, inclusive, and welcoming school climate where students and staff are engaged and fully invested in students' academic, health, and social emotional learning. Now, don't be confused about this word social emotional learning. Basically, that word has been around in education for a long time. It just means that we want to develop the emotional capacity of our students to handle challenges and be resilient in this work. Especially after we just got out of the pandemic, many of our students need that extra emotional support. And number 3, create engaging parent, student, and staff, and overall community population that is fully vested in and actively connected to the school community and academic program. I think the key here is that we put it into the LCAP and called it out that we want to continue to engage parents and also students in what we do here as a academic program. Okay, those 3 main goals of the LCAP. Each of those goals are then broken down into actions. And then what Delano and I do is then take these actions and assign dollar amounts to each of these actions. All right, we don't have to go through all of them because you have this in your board packet, but some notable things is continue developing our ELD program, our special education program, because the population is increasing there. The word is getting out that IIA serves students with disabilities very well. And that we communicate and work with our parents very well with them. We want to continue obviously hiring and retaining highly qualified teachers and then continue expanding our middle school. We're really excited that the increase in enrollment of our middle school for next year and the addition of periods and electives. So we have period 0 all the way to period 8. Okay, so students don't have to attend period 0, but if they do, they get an elective. And then period 8 is the elective for everybody. So pretty excited about our expansion of middle school. One person, notable person that you should compliment if you see him is Mr. Matt Gibbons. He's really helped develop this program with parent input. Okay, what are some of the metrics that we're going to use, obviously, to gauge our progress on this? iReady growth, SBAC, teacher retention numbers, and Mandarin proficiency levels. Goal 2, some notable things is one thing we need to improve on is our SART training and support. That means for those students that are chronically absent or tardy, they go through a process in which we give support. Good news, chronic absenteeism dropped a couple percentage points, which is really great. So we're headed in the right direction. And is actually lower, obviously, than the average of the district and the state. Suspension rates decreased, but that's going to be a metric. So it's chronic absenteeism. Attendance rates will be a measure. And then the surveys, the annual family surveys that we give, in particular around, do students feel safe here? And do they have a positive relationship with their teachers? Okay. Goal 3, we'll continue parent engagement workshops, but we've heard more desire for parent workshops, much like the ones that Molly has been given in the last 2 months. Molly has come, she has given workshops on growth mindset. And boy, the parents that have attended really have received a lot of great knowledge from that. So thank you, Molly. We're gonna have Molly continue doing that next year. Okay. We're also assigning Sai to be a bilingual community outreach support person. So we did hire another part-time office assistant so that she can continue helping with that outreach. Community partnerships, we have to build more community partnerships because some of our students actually need some wraparound services. They come from broken homes. And believe it or not, we do have not lots, but students who have divorced parents. And so our students need more counseling and things like that to go through these, to get through those. And then families need more access to those dual immersion online support programs. So that's what you'll see here. This year we added ELAC. Next year we're going to add school site council. And that's needed because we're going to start receiving Title I, Title II, and Title III money. This extra money and revenue that we have not been getting. But now that our unduplicated count is increasing and our English language learners are at a high level, we're going to get some money now from this federal government. That's what Title I, II, and III are. So that's pretty much of the LCAP. I will work with Donaldo between now and the next board meeting, our board retreat, to go ahead and assign budget amount and dollar amounts to each of these actions. Any questions?
Just a general question around some of the key aspects of character development, enforcement of qualities. Where is that? Is that part of this?
Yeah. So character developments is all under PBIS and classroom behavior supports. And so money will be assigned in those 2 areas. We're going to continue really furthering our work on our 6 pillars, our character counts pillars, and focusing on those things next year.
So I saw these posters. So we have 6 pillars now. I guess this.
We implemented a program called Character Counts, and Character Counts teaches our students through 6 pillars: responsibility, respect, trustworthiness, fairness, caring, and citizenship. So we each time we introduce a pillar, the teachers teach some mini lessons or pick some read aloud books to learn those traits. Then we reinforce and reward those students through not only Student of the Month, but also through Panda Pals and things like that. Okay. They also talk about them in what we call community circles, where they get in a circle and they just talk about conflict they may have had at recess. Okay. Now, when it says wellness program, that's basically, a continuation of mental health, but more nutrition. So we have a nutrition plan and that's led by Jamie. Yeah, so we want our kids to eat well. Okay. Any other questions about this?
Just a comment more for those who are joining us or would watch this. Would it be fair to say that the LCAP goals that were set over a year ago, this board will be working with our executive director and looking back at the achievement of those goals and measurements? I just want to say that for everybody, because these are not done in a vacuum. It starts at the top, and your evaluation is largely the LCAP accomplishments.
That's right. So during the evaluation, we'll give you the updated, what's called the updated, LCAP or updated plan from this previous year, and yeah, you'll be able to evaluate the success of these actions or not.
Very good. Great. Well, we thank you for that. And then we move to, unless there's objections, I move to item C. Mary Beth, I will just do a touch point. Any public comments on item C, board discussing the updates on the executive director annual evaluation? Dr. Bean, you want to add anything on that other than, I would comment that we solicit your self-evaluation. The board then adds to it their vantage point, insights, and we discuss, and then we'll have a finalized report that accurate on, again, how we'll do it this year.
Yep. Yeah, that process sounds exactly right.
A lot to celebrate, and it'd be nice to chronicle it for everybody and do that as well. Did everybody participate in that last year, or is it new for anybody? The executive director evaluation, is that new for you this year? No, you did it last year. Good, I think everybody's familiar with it then. You're good, okay. Item D, board to discuss board retreat agenda items and agree on the June date for that regularly scheduled board meeting. Have we set a date already? I thought I might have seen an email. Say it one more time.
Well, it's scheduled for June 18th, but I think you have a line item there that we're going to discuss if that needs to change, because the board retreat will be longer than the usual general board meeting.
Right.
So that's coming up in item, what?
We're at it right now.
Oh, right now, wow, you guys are fast.
Make some recommendations and I'll take out our calendar.
Oh, yeah, so, it's scheduled for the 18th, that's a Tuesday. Last year we did a board retreat that was pretty much almost all day. So you guys need to find a day that we can get quorum. The first half of the day will be a board retreat in which you'll be trained around Brown Act, fiscal policies. And then you'll have your regular board meeting after that, which will include, of course, LCAP and whatever else.
And final budget.
And final budget, yep.
Let's just do a little round robin survey. Would that date of the 18th be available for everyone? I know it's obviously a middle of the week. I'm actually open that day. Completely.
June 18th.
Yeah, Tuesday, June 18th. Anybody traveling or? I'm okay. You're good? Molly's a thumbs up. Doug is a thumbs up at this point. Having fun. David's good. Brett, you can travel? Felipe?
Yeah.
And then Miller, we could send him an email and see how he's doing. He may travel for that and come down in person, which would be ideal. Would that be good for you, Dr. Bean, then?
Yeah.
And what time, just start time, you think at 9 a.m. or are you?
No, I mean, depends on what time you want the general board meeting to start. Usually we start that at 6, but it doesn't have to start then, start earlier. So we can do, how about we did last time, we did lunch?
Start with lunch?
Yeah, start with lunch and then go into the afternoon. And then the general board meeting could be 4 or 5 o'clock.
let's go with that as a plan, and if we need to augment a little bit, but Mary Beth, you can help us with that communication, right? Oh, wow. Okay. I'm gonna just put something in my iPhone right now as a placeholder.
So half a day or several,
It
several
looks,
4 hours?
looks like lunch at noon.
Okay.
Wonderful. Right, thank you. Action items ahead, moving to item 8. Mary Beth, let me know if there's any public comments, but item A is board to consider and approve the 2024-25 middle school calendar. So we have a middle school calendar now as well. Thank you for preparing that. It's very exciting. Any comments from board members on that? If not, I'll ask for, yeah, a motion.
Is that the same as the regular?
Oh, how does it differ from
Yes,
the
so-
elementary?
The start and end time is the same, teacher days off are the same, holidays the same. The only difference is that middle schools, they do not have minimum days on Wednesdays. Except for, I believe, is on your calendars, there is one minimum day, right, Tiffany, thank you. There's one minimum day, I believe, the last Wednesday of the week, or of the month. I'm not looking at it right now, do you have a copy in front of you? No? But yes, that's one big difference. Minimum days,
Next Wednesday.
So instead of weekly, it
And-
is the last.
yes. And then also, we are moving to a semester system for middle school. So it does show that.
That's interesting. So why the change?
Why do we do that? Or,
Yeah,
because of, electives and grades and GPA. We want to align more with our district.
Yeah.
And so we want to do semester report cards. And we may shift elementary to that eventually. But right now in middle school, we definitely want that. Other than that, I think, if I'm looking at this correctly, I think that's really the only differences.
So yeah. Wednesday, partial day, last day of the, last Wednesday of the month, and then semester system. Great. Well, I'll entertain then a motion to approve the middle school calendar for 24-25 school year. Brett says yes, and David's a second. We'll go down the line and start with Molly
Yes.
and Doug. Yes, and Brett
I,
and David.
Aye.
And Felipe.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Item B, the board will consider and approve declaration of need for fully qualified educators. It's a bit of a formality that we have to go through, but Dr. Bean, any explanation on this publication that we'll make?
Yeah, all of our teachers are properly qualified. Some, however, they have until a year to be properly qualified in early ed. So that's on there for TK. We want to have the option to be able to have some of these emergency credentials, but in order to do that, we have to have this board approve the declaration of need, because there's certainly a need in Mandarin instruction. In terms of, the pool is very small.
And this gives an extra tool for you and or the principal then to attract the teachers we need to, and then quickly have them credentialed.
Yeah, we assign them like a different kind of permit to be able to do that.
Great. Any comments or questions on that item? I'll move then that we approve the declaration of need for fully qualified educators. There be a second for that? And Molly seconds, and going left to right, Molly?
Yes.
And Doug Houston say yes, and Brett?
I,
And David?
Yeah.
And Felipe?
Yes.
Wonderful. Brings us to our final action item C. The board will consider and approve annual notification. I'll ask Dr. Bean to give us a little insight on that.
Yeah, every year we are required as a school to notify parents of their ed code legal rights. And so we have a list of them and you see them. This time around, I think there was only one small addition, and that is what happens if somebody ODs on narcotics? Do we have medication here, or do we have to call 911? And we do not provide the medication that, that in case somebody has an OD on the narcotics. Other than that, it's all pretty much the same as last year. We publish it then on our website and we put it on the wall out there, and that becomes our annual notification.
Any comments or questions on that? For recollection, we're less than, I think it's 2 blocks away from emergency responders, so we're very fortunate in that way.
Yeah.
I'll ask them for a motion to approve the annual notification.
I motion.
Thank you, Felipe. Looks like David will second. Let's go reverse order, Felipe.
Here.
Just want to keep everybody alive and such.
Sure.
David?
Yeah.
And Brett? And Doug is a yes, and Molly?
Yes.
Wonderful. That concludes our action items. Brings us to closing items. We'll do round robin with board member comments prior to our adjournment motion. And if I start with you, sometimes I throw you off, but I feel like I'm going to start with you, Molly.
I feel like I just look forward to the next year. With all the wonderful things, amazing things that are happening this year. With the new people joining this family and talking about the system principle, something that we talked about it last year. And now we actually have someone, and also the enrollment. I mean, we talk about this in the 300 range for so long, and it just amazingly goes up. The PTO is just so supportive, want to know how they can help continue to help us and get ready for the next school year. So I'm just so proud of everybody that is in this family, and I'm grateful. I feel like I'm learning so much, and I get to know this school so well. And so next year, I do like to spend more time. Get to know the parents, get to know the kids. Like Felipe, right? We're here all the time, so I'm just look forward to the new year. Yes.
I'm starting to notice that you're here all the time too.
I would say just this, that I look back on this year and a couple of thoughts. One is how quickly it seemed to flow by. We're here in May already, and yet the richness of activities and education that happened, it's enormous. It's amazing. It's wonderful. And I thank you, Dr. Bean, and the team here, but then also thank the board for just their encouragement, for all who are part of the school staff, the parents for their involvement as well. It's really a complete team effort, and it's been a stellar year. And of course, the testing will show that as well, but it's more than that. It's like you said, it's become an environment where it feels a lot like family. So I'm just grateful to be a small part of that.
So my first thank you is to Felipe and all those who put the gala together. That event, it feels like it's been running for several years, and it just gets better and better. And it really was a phenomenal event, and the integration with the kids and the performances, the fan dance, the trio, the images of the basketball tournament and the spelling bee, all the updates. It was such an exciting event. It was so much fun. I don't think the kids wanted to leave. So thank you to you and the entire team that put that together. That was really fantastic evening. A lot of memories. Also, Dr. Bean, I want to wish you good luck here as you pursue this new role. I speak for myself, but I'm sure the board also would probably agree, but I speak for myself that whatever path is the right path, whether that's here, whether that's as the new superintendent, I wish you the very best. What you have done for this school is nothing short of amazing. And, you know, we sit here and listen and get these report outs and everything, but it's really because we have confidence in you and the team that have created really an amazing school. So thank you. Good luck tonight and over the next few weeks. Thank you.
You wanna do it? All right, just couple of comments, you know, sitting here, just looking back, and we couldn't even imagine 2 years ago, right? And we are at here and see how much growth and development of the school's experience, and especially under the leadership of Dr. Bean, after you joined. And I know we have sometimes we have a really serious discussions, but everything turns out to be great. I'm very, very happy to see everything's transforming and transiting. And just for the good. I'm very happy to see the progress. And also just echoing Brad's comment. Regardless of what you're gonna do in the future, wish you the best. I mean, we talked briefly over the phone. I said, either way, I mean, from the bottom of my heart, you have my support, regardless. And I'm sure, if everything goes smoothly, goes well, you will do fantastic in a new capacity. All right. And also wanted to comment to Philippe, thank you for organizing the gala. Went really well. Yeah, and appreciated your efforts. You're welcome. It's a lot of work. Yeah, a lot of work. And went well. The kids, parents, the kids all have a good time. The teachers.
I'm gonna ask Mary Beth, can we show the video? While she's getting that, we got a couple of things here. I wanna thank all the people that did work. It wasn't just me. I know I take most of the credit, but Tiffany Kraft, Ruth Chi, Stacy Cohen, Lillian Nguyen, Miss Carissa, Annie Alley, Wayne Yu, Miss Small, just see there's just this list, right? Sai, my wife, and my Shishong, Lisa Ko, Daniel Chu, which is, we're gonna see hit the video here that he created. And of course, probably the biggest thank you goes to Julie Chi for the band dance that she worked on very hard. We received this, for those of you who weren't here, we received this certificate of recognition, and it's congratulations on the 2nd annual gala celebration. And so I'm actually had this frame, Mr. Bean. I remember we got this, but I had it framed. Probably gonna stick it right up there where you see the gala banner up there. I think that does a great job of showing people our culture. Future parents that come, that do the tour, we pointed out to them that gala event is not only a fundraising event, but it's a part to create the community and culture that we have at our school. And, that's a big part of it. And it's a celebration. It really is. And one thing I noticed, I think they'll probably do more next year, is to have more of that children involvement. For those of you who were there, that they end there with the kids and the dancing and all that. That was all spontaneous. That was not meant to be. And I realized that that's exactly, that's probably the biggest compliment that I got was that there, because that meant everybody's having a good time, right? And so, yeah, before we watch the video, I do have one more thing to say. I'm not doing this again next year. You just right now, I'm telling you, you're finding somebody else.
That's what you said last year. Come on. I don't believe it.
We'll vote for you.
So if you don't mind, because this is, if you haven't seen this, this is really, this is the.
我是觉得梦想就在不远方，踮起脚尖不停啊，却又突然看不见方向。现实就像明深陷一口墙，我在寻找一扇窗，等在黑夜里灯火点亮。少不必要将风雨中的光，让流星雨将你并肩走过的时光，没有你我不懂，我走在心里有点倔强。你看风的翅膀，你让尽头绽放，你那远方的风啊，我有话想对你讲，你在心里的深刻你给我一个方向，我一眼都能看上，让我相信会有希望在前方。人家叫我天空不会你一片晴朗，我希望它能当你一的是像模样，是这未来我今天跟这里都很像，也趁着没发现后放下顾虑在身上，做个小虎队，我的心里中的大雨一样，我心像你一起走过的时光，没有你不如果我走在心里很倔强。的翅膀，你让尽头绽放，伟大人生的梦啊，我有话想对你讲，你在你的身旁，给我一个方向，我比你更看上，让我相信会有希望在前方。
You know, I have only two numbers to add here. One is that talking to, Ms. Prof there, Tiffany, that she spits a lot of numbers in my face, but there's only two that I remember. And that is that we have $66,000 in revenue and our cost was just north of 26,000. Wow. So that means our fundraising could just somewhere in the neighborhood of 40, south of 3,000, something like that. So, yeah, that's what the result of that is. Not to mention, we had a good time doing it, right? Everybody except me, because I'm. That's it.
We thank you, Felipe. Wow, and just the parent involvement, student involvement, wonderful. Well, it brings us to the conclusion. I want to thank everybody for participating tonight, as well as those who would watch online or later. I'll invite a motion for adjournment then.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Felipe. I'll second that. And we'll work from left to right. Molly? And Doug is a yes, and Brett?
Aye.
And David?
Yeah.
And Felipe?
Yes.
And we're adjourned. Thank you, Mary Beth, for coordination tonight. Thank you, Dr. Bean.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Fantastic. When, let's see.